Hi, good afternoon to everyone. So I'm pleased to connect all the speakers. So Pamela ma'am, Ms. Pamela Kumar, she is the Director General, Telecommunication Standards Development Society, India, TSDSI, which is also the founding chair and current president of CCICI and the Bharti Chair visiting professor at UIT Punjab University. Then I'm pleased to announce about Mr. Satish Jamdagani. He's Vice Chair, DSI and Chair Study Group Networks. TSDSI is the Vice President and Head of Standards in Reliance Jio. So welcome Satish ji. Dr. Rajkumar Upadhyay sir, Co-Chair, Outreach Committee, TSDSI. He's an officer of Indian Telecommunication Services of Government of India and is currently the ED CDOT. Welcome Rajkumar sir. Mr. Subhash Mandal, he is the Governing Council Member, TSDSI. He's a Wipro Fellow and the Chief Architect of 5G at Wipro. So, welcome Subhash ji. And we have Mr. Rajesh Gangadhar. He's former Chair Outreach Committee. He's the CTO of Access Solutions at Sterlite Technologies Limited. So, welcome Rajesh, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Radhakrishnan Gandhi, member TSDSI. He's an associate professor at Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. So welcome, Dr. Radha. I'll request Mr. Asif to play the video. So we have a small video for all the participants who are new to TSDSI. So there is a small introductory videos for you. I'll request Asif, if you can start the video, please.
I think host can play that video. I don't have that one. I have PPTs for all the panelists.
Since the first mobile call made on 31st July 1995, Indian telecom sector has grown as the second largest telecom market in the world, connecting India affordably and transforming our society. Despite the huge diversity in terrain, culture, user base, climate, and constrained power supply and high population density, Indians enjoy the lowest telecom tariffs in the world. Therefore, our requirements are different from other regions. The global telecom standards ecosystem has been dominated by 3GPP and ITU. However, India's contribution was not significant until the mid-2010s. A need for an Indian telecommunication standards development organization that can reflect the diverse needs of our market and promote our IP on the global stage was felt. This was acknowledged in the National Telecom Policy 2012.
I would expect the Standard Society to articulate India's concern on the international stage, which are India specific, and the world must listen to that. Because I see electronic manufacturing and communication technology also merging at some point of time.
TSDSI is an autonomous, membership-based body comprising entities from across the telecom ecosystem and application verticals. We are recognized by DoT as India's Telecom SDO. Soon after inception, we became organizational partner of 3GPP and joined the One M2M partnership project, and the journey continues with further partnership agreements being signed up with other global forums. TSDSI's vision is to ensure that digital communication standards increasingly drive domestic economic and policy activities, thereby creating a leadership position through India's participation in emerging digital communication standards in global SDOs. Our technical activities are carried out in two study groups: networks and services and solutions. Standards development falls into three phases: pre-standards, standards, and post. Our roadmap is driven by this philosophy, and specific topics are taken up in task forces and technology item proposal forums. TSDSI, in a relatively short span of 6 years, has made a mark in the standards world. TSDSI standards are being taken by Telecom Engineering Center for adoption as national standards. Our latest accomplishment is the incorporation of the TSDSI 5G radio interface technology as an independent technology in the ITU-R specifications for IMT 2020. As technology development cycles shrink, spurred by softwareization and disaggregation, India, traditionally a software powerhouse and a huge market, has an opportunity to take a leadership position in the global technology landscape. IP and standards will drive the economic growth. With TSDSI RIT becoming part of the global IMT 2020 specifications, India is poised to play a more active role in the global standards arena. Design local, deploy global. Join us to deliver more such solutions that address the specific requirements of the developing world based on indigenous IP.
Okay, so after this great video, I'm handing over this session to Pamela ma'am, so she can start this discussion with all the speakers. So Pamela ma'am, after your approval, you can start this session.
Okay, thank you very much. It's indeed a pleasure to be here with this set of panelists who represent the stalwarts of the 5G world, I would say, in India. They are the ones who have their hands deep into enabling 5G, or rather 5GI, which is the 5G for India specification that we have, which has been approved at ITU in its early deployment. And in the morning session, there was, it was very clear in the future roadmap of 5G that already we are seeing the need for the beyond 5G technologies to really realize the vision of 5G. Now, what was 5G all about? 5G is this huge paradigm shift technology, right? They say it's going to take society to a different level. And this paradigm shift comes from two dimensions. The first one is the convergence of technologies. So the boundaries between what is IT and what is telecom and what is robotics and what are drones, all those boundaries have converged. Semiconductors, all that has converged. It's all of these are basically building blocks of and enabling technologies for the transformation of life as we know it. The transformation of health, education, the way we do business, the way we I would say e-commerce, okay, and also the transformation of all the industry verticals the way we know it, right? Whether it's the banking industry or the manufacturing industry. So these are the two dimensions with which 5G is supposed to be transforming the world. Now, there is a certain specification which has been, which is being accepted as 5G, or the enhanced version, which is 5GI, which is intended for deployment in India. Now, will these enable the actual realization of this vision of 5G or IMT 2020? That is the question that the industry is working on, and that is what we will dwell over. And then conclude with what is this path to 6G within India lens, through an India lens. So I would start, the Big Bang story with the operators. So Satish Jamadagni from Reliance Jio will give us the operators' perspective. See, the operators who have put in a lot of investment and effort in deploying 4G in this country and transforming this country using 4G. And are gearing up for the 5G trials and 5G pilots. What are they thinking about 6G? How important is it for India to jump onto this 6G bandwagon is what Satish will start the panel with today. Yeah, Satish, you can go.
Yeah, hello.
So can we get Satish's presentation up, please?
Yeah, host, can you make me presenter? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Satish. Satish, we can't hear you.
I was on mute. Sorry. So, good afternoon. I'll just try to summarize the needs for 6G from having an analysis or critical analysis of where we are from a 5G perspective. This is purely from an engineering point of view, from a requirements point of view. That does not necessarily mean that I'm trying to have a critical analysis of 5G in itself, but a good analysis of 5G is in order, and if we really have to start understanding the path to 6G. Next slide, please. So one of the key things that we have to look at is the 5G promise versus what has been delivered so far. So one of the big questions was with respect to the big pipe. 5G was supposed to provide us with a very big pipe, and that is something that we will look at. And going forward, in a so-called stable 5G network deployment scenario, 80% of the data is supposed to come from machine types, not necessarily from human-originated devices. That means it's not from your phones. It will be from machine type devices, including CPEs. So we look at how 5G scales up or does not necessarily scale up to handle this kind of a scenario. Then one of the key things to understand is from different verticals, industry verticals, what can or what needs remote control or connectivity, strong connectivity, versus what can actually be considered as autonomous applications, but unnecessarily we are trying to waste our time on segments which can be autonomous. This is something that has to be carefully understood in order to have a sensible network design. Then we look at 5G network design from a services point of view, and then there's always the question of intelligence in 5G for 5G and applications. Next slide, please. A quick look at the big pipe scenario in 5G. In order to understand this, we compare 5G with LTE. Now, I don't want to get into the details of how these numbers are arrived at. And of course, one can always argue plus or minus some 5% here and there, 10% here and there. But in general, the common understanding is that something about 13 to 15% is what 5G now provides as terms of spectral efficiency or gains over LTE. This is an apple-to-apple comparison. Now, if you take 20 megahertz of 5G bandwidth and 20 megahertz of LTE bandwidth, this is the comparison. You get about 15% of gains. Next slide. This is just a clip from one of the reports recently, which also acknowledges that there is something around 10% gains. Plus or minus, you can always argue because it's based on the optimizations and certain network parameter settings, but you know the ballpark. What we are talking about is a ballpark gain comparison between LTE and 5G, and this is very critical because if there was a promise of a big pipe, then the spectral efficiency or the throughput gains from one generation to another generation has to be substantial. Next slide, please. The other key aspect to look at is, does 5G necessarily cater to all the kind of use cases that is listed here? Majority of which are of machine type, including, say, for example, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to anything. The previous slide, please. Vehicle to vehicle, video monitoring, or essentially camera related applications. You also have remote connectivity, visual reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, augmented reality kind of applications. But if you look at the existing architecture today, one can argue that not all of them can be optimally handled. One can also argue that it can be handled, but then again, it's a question of how optimal the network is configured to handle these kind of applications. That is critical because that dictates how we can scale the networks subsequently. Now, the existing 5G network is still centered on enhanced mobile broadband, and much of the other aspects are an afterthought. You can go to the next slide. To understand that better, for example, if you look at URLLC, which is low latency, URLLC as a functionality deals more with robustness than necessarily address the issue of latency. Latency, again, it's over the air latency. As we say, the latency over the air is primarily between the device and the base station, but it's not necessarily end to end. So there are other issues that has to be handled, that will have to be handled if one has to talk about latency, end to end latency per se. Now, there is another key item which has to be understood. That is the so-called autonomous use cases, which 3GPP tries to address within the network fold. And even if it has to be addressed, I mean, it has a different paradigm altogether. I mean, it has to be addressed very differently, not the way it is currently orchestrated within the 5G architecture. Just as a point. Just as another point in this argument, you see that Tesla has made a clear distinction saying that connectivity is not necessary for the autonomous vehicle program. Can we go to the next slide? So even when we talk about 5G, there are two aspects to 5G. One is using of 5G within 5G networks, usage of AI within 5G networks. In terms of using intelligence for network optimization versus 5G network being in a position to provide intelligence to other apps or services. So, when we talk about intelligent networks, we talk about the second part where the network is in a position to provide a certain amount of intelligence to whatever applications or services which are sitting on top or utilizing such kind of a network. Now we are still in the first phase. We're still trying to make sense of how best to use AI to address some of the key optimization issues in a 5G network, let alone provide intelligence to any other application. So there's still some distance to be covered here. It is something very critical to understand as we move from 5G to 6G. Next slide, please. So that is in summary, broad level, one can say gap analysis of 5G specifications as it stands today. But those are still at a high level. I have not got into the details, but each and every single, you can easily understand that each and every single of those slides can be blown up into what can affect the network architecture, the air interface, and every single aspect of the network aspect. I'm talking about physical air, and it's across the stack. Those high-level points affects everything across the stack. So what are we doing in TSDSI to address some of those issues and try to steer the discussions towards the 6G the standardization effort? We already have a steady item running in TSDSI, which intends to provide inputs into the ongoing IMT 2030 vision document. That is only the first step. But then subsequently, we also plan to start normative, or what is called as the standardization process, the actual specification writing work for 6G. And then if you look at the timelines, we have positioned ourselves slightly ahead of the global 6G timelines, just to make sure that whatever we specify as part of 6G efforts can also be globally harmonized. That is also something which is very critical. So you also see the timelines which we are looking at, which is slightly ahead of the global timeline, just to make sure that we get the advantage and make sure that we can harmonize the rest of the standards. This is in short, the objectives, the so-called gaps in 5G, which will take us towards 6G. And with that, next slide, I think I'm done. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Satish. I think that was very, very clear and very concise on the gaps between the promise and the delivery or the potential delivery of the 5G specifications that have actually been approved. And these gaps have to be filled in with the subsequent generation, whether we call it 5.5G or 6G. And that that example of the fact that within TSDSI there is already a study item for beyond 5G and 6G which is being worked on, and these initiatives have also started in ITU and 3GPP. ITU is already inviting contributions, and I think May is going to be the first round where these contributions are going to be deliberated, and the whole world is gearing up for that. So while 5G is an important foundation for realizing the promise, we have to start playing in, and we have to initiate our journey towards 6G. That's the message that came out of Satish's short presentation here. Given that, who other than Mr. Upadhyay, the Executive Director of CDOT, to talk about the readiness of the Indian telecoms ecosystem. He will illuminate and give us insights into the Indian telecom, the readiness of India's telecom ecosystem to provide technology and products for beyond 5G and 6G. And before that, I would just say that while 5G is this paradigm shift in technology and the use cases going into the verticals, the transformational paradigm shift that 5G represents, for India, 5G also represents this paradigm shift from being a pure consumer of technologies, which is what we did in 2G, 3G, 4G, to actually making a foray into becoming a contributor in terms of innovations and products to the telecom technologies. So over to you, Mr. Upadhyay.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Upadhyay's presentation, please.
Please make me continuous presenter so that I can present all the. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would, in the meantime, encourage all the attendees to please put their questions in the chat window, because we will have time for questions after these presentations.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Pamela. After a nice brief up from Satish, that what are the promises of 5G, where are the gaps, and why should operators leapfrog to 6G? So what I'm going to cover in my presentation is that what is happening on the 5G trials across the world, and if you have to move to 6G, what is the kind of ecosystem we need to look at it, and what are the challenges in migrating to 6G in the country. Next slide, please. So I start with the 5G trials and deployments. We know that commercially 5G networks are operating around 61 countries as per the recent data by GSA. 144 operators have launched commercial 5G services in these countries. Around 413 operators in 131 countries are investing in various 5G tests, trials, pilots, and deployments. So the 5G is getting deployed across the globe. As regards India, our government has said that the rollout of 5G will happen by early 2022 after another round of spectrum auction. Recently, we had an auction. So for the 5G, that auction is planned in August 2021. So 5G trial spectrum allocation for trials will be expected shortly. And we learned to understand from DOT that this trial spectrum will be allotted very shortly to the operators, and we know that the operators have actually tied up with their partners for demonstrating the 5G capabilities using the trial spectrum. All four telcos are very keen to give the trial, and in fact, looking at the media report, we saw recently that one of the operators showcased its 5G technology over a commercial network, and the other has indicated that it is ready to test its own 5G network in technology in the country. As far as the CDOT is concerned, we are ready with 5G NSA. So currently, our 5G NSA is under test, and once the trials are open, we also intend to participate in the trial, demonstrating our 5G NSA capability. Next. So when we look at the ecosystem, we were talking about, the topic was ecosystem. So what comprises this ecosystem for us? So the ecosystem will have handsets and device manufacturers. It will have equipment manufacturers and IT solution developers who will develop applications over these 5G network or 6G networks. Infrastructure providers in terms of towers, in-building solutions, fiber. Why I say towers? Because in 5G and 6G, because of the high frequency, attenuation will be very, very large. Therefore, we will require very, very small cells, which will require street permissions and I mean, every pole, every location, that kind of infrastructure providers we will be requiring. Then mobile network operators who are finally going to launch these services on their network. And lastly, R&D, academia and standards body. It is very important that R&D takes place in our country also, as Pamela was telling, that instead of being a consumer of the technology, we should become supplier of the technology to the whole world. And given the TSDSI's excellent work, I am sure that, and the kind of membership it is growing, I'm sure that a lot of R&D work will happen through TSDSI in partnership with academia and R&D institutions like us. The standards play a very, very important role, and this will, avoid any hassles, provide interoperability and, be at par with the global standards. And then lastly, the ecosystem, the investment in enabling government policies, primarily the spectrum, radio spectrum, which need to be allotted by government. There should be ease of capital and ease of doing business. The regulatory environment should be quite stable. So these are the ecosystem which will have to be looked at if we need to move to 6G. Next. So what is current beyond 5G and 6G ecosystem India, and what are the priority areas? I think a lot was said by Mr. Satish, where he said that how 5G is, whatever gaps have been identified and why we are moving to 6G. If we have to move to 6G, what all we need to do, what are the areas where we need to concentrate as a country, ramping up the digital infrastructure. This is very important because we need a very high degree of connectivity when there will be large number of cells, and we need massive fiberization. Still, a lot of towers are working on microwave, and fiberization is one of the key requirements which need to be done. And then the other very important aspect is addressing the issues related to ROW. The ROW being the state subject, I think the policies of ROWs are different at different states. And with the many cells coming up, I think this ROW will become much more important, and this need to be addressed. Then boosting connectivity in rural and remote areas. Bharat Broadband is doing a good work. They have already connected 150,000 Gram Panchayats with fiber. Our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, have already announced that within 1,000 days, all 607,000 villages will have fiber. So on the fiber side, we need to do work. And the second important aspect is spectrum allocation to millimeter wave and terahertz frequencies. The 5G, we will require a spectrum in both low band, 3.6 gigahertz, and then millimeter waves, 26 gigahertz, 28 gigahertz, 35 gigahertz. That is spectrum need to be allocated, need to be auctioned, so that people, the operators can move forward in 5G. And regarding 6G, we will be using terahertz frequencies. That also, the identification of the bands should take place so that operators and the ecosystem stakeholders start planning for their future plans. The third thing is robust supply chain for indigenous manufacturing. You all are aware the government has come up with National Directive on Security, wherein portal is being made by NSCS to register the vendors, to identify the trusted sources, because the security of the country is paramount, and therefore this government is taking very proactive action in this regard, and we are expecting this portal to be up by 15th of June. Then creating advanced fabrication and electronic manufacturing facility. In-house, we currently don't have advanced fabrication and electronic manufacturing. If we need to be supplier of the technology, then we need to also work in establishing advanced fab facilities in the country. And building ecosystem for availability of devices for cheaper rates. As somebody was pointing out, I think Satish only pointed out, or Madam pointed out, that SCPs are a very, very important part. And if we need to, be out of this trap, we need to develop our own standard and convert them into standard essential packages. Boosting R&D with substantial investment. Typically, the R&D investment in this country on telecom is a little low, given the R&D expenditures of companies like Huawei and other one, which is running in billions of dollars. The R&D investment need to be stepped up. Government has definitely come up with schemes like PLI, which has really given good result in at least in mobile handset manufacturing, and I'm sure recently announced 12,000 plus crore package in PLI will help boost the indigenous manufacturing. in the country. And PMA also, government is working very closely to put these kind of equipments into the PMA list so that the Indian manufacturers get a preferential market access. The last and very important, regularizing the entire ecosystem with advanced security, because security is paramount, is very, very important. We have seen cases of security breaches and some countries taking certain decisions in the sovereign interest, keeping the security in mind. Next, please. So evolving the current thing to enable 5G and 6G. So what is important? One is that openness and intelligence. These are the drivers of futuristic hyperconnected B5G and 6G network. So we need to move into the open networks because currently the systems are all vendor-based, proprietary-based, and therefore the flexibility in terms of developing new applications or cost or interoperability becomes a big problem. There are certain initiatives like O-RAN which are taking place, and I think we also as a CDOT are working on O-RAN kind of technology, developing separate BBU, separate RRH, and delinking them. And we are, I think TSDSI, has become O-RAN member or is in the process of becoming O-RAN member, and we should leverage that partnership. Then open architecture will reduce actually dependencies on proprietary designs, guarantee interoperability, and spur collaboration for faster deployment. Building high degree of virtualization, this SDN and NFB and all are already part of 5G. This will take one more, we need to take one more step. We make more of the network functions going on to the cloud in 6G also. Transforming dedicated hardware into software entities capable of running standard IT hardware servers. So off the shelf, if we design the software, whatever software you prefer telecom, and put it on the off-the-shelf servers, it will be very, very useful. For example, our 5G, our CDOT's 4G and 5G NSA work on standard servers. You don't need any specialized hardware. Put the software in any of the Dell or Sun or IBM or whatever software servers are available. Just download that and it starts functioning. It has to give full support to IoT and time-sensitive sensor networks to facilitate efficient and effective decision making in an automated manner, because a lot of automation is being thought of from 5G also. This will continue in 6G also. Next. So what are the key consideration and design architectures for this? So since B5G and 6G system need to be redefined in terms of design, because when we migrate from static network topology to one that supports automated operations, in terms of it should be able to configure, make an addition, deletion, or anything. Some way SON is doing this work, but this will become automatic part of the network itself. Tremendous computing capability is required because high-end media applications will be running. Therefore, the battery life has to be improved, as well as the computing power the computing capabilities will have to be increased. The third one is high degree of reliability to support latency sensitive services. Latency has been promised in 5G also, but this will require much more in 6G because of the much higher data rates and the spectral efficiency, and extremely low latency and jitter for the desired performance for applications that are very critical in terms of automation, connected cars, and all those kind of applications where the response time is very, very important. Better network coverage with low power consumption. Power consumption has to be low because now with limited number of towers itself, there is a scare of radiation. Once we see the street furniture everywhere all around us, the power consumption has to be very, very low. The radiation part from these cells has to be very, very limited. Next is the managing limited computational capacity of mobile devices. This is happening in 5G also, that lot of computation is moving to the edge rather than to core. And this will be a requirement in 6G also, that when we deal many high bandwidth applications and the special use cases for different industries, some of the capacity of computation will move to the edge, and that need to be worked out. And data driven and intelligent B5G and 6G systems. So advanced research is required in AI and ML, and where the automation is key. A lot of AI research is happening in our country, and given the software prowess India has, I'm sure that we should be able to come up with many things in this space of AI and ML. AR and VR is being handled by 5G. It is at least promised to be handled by 5G. The 6G has to be truly immersive extended reality. So not only AR, VR, it will actually move to extended reality. Next. So finally, what are the challenges in developing these technologies? The biggest challenge is operation in terahertz frequencies, because in the 6G, if we need more spectrum, we are moving to the terahertz frequencies. Once we go to this level of high frequency, then we need to manage path losses, propagation models. How do we what kind of models will be talked about by Mr. Ganti later in the presentation. So we need to look at the solid state. What will be the design changes? What will be the changes, impact of terahertz frequencies on solid state electronics? And same way, beamforming is part of 5G, but it will be much more evolved beamforming architecture in 6G. Currently, we have massive MIMO in our massive MIMO in 5G. It will become ultra massive MIMO in 6G. Therefore, there is a need to work on antenna technologies. Evolution of duplex technologies, because 6G should also take care of downlink and uplink simultaneously. So a lot of work will happen on duplex technologies. And as spectrum is a scarce resource, we should be able to achieve dynamic spectrum sharing for optimum utilization of resources. This will also require some kind of regulatory intervention from the regulator for allowing such things. So in the 6G, we need to migrate from static network topology to that one supports automatic operations in terms of automatically configuration of the nodes, addition of the nodes, neighborhood relations, additions, whatever is required, it should do all automatically using AI. And finally, this also need to support not only the terrestrial components like fixed and moving base station, but should also support non-terrestrial components like satellite and airplanes. So a lot to be covered, but there are areas clearly known where we need to work together as a community. And I'm sure, given the prowess, software prowess, and the intelligence, what we have just as Indians, I'm sure that we should be able to meet the requirements and expectation for 5G as well as 6G. So thank you. I think this was my last. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Mr. Upadhyay. A very, very comprehensive view of the technology space that the ecosystem players need to focus on in order to enable 6G. It's very encouraging to see that having you at the helm of CDOT, which is our flagship R&D institution, that you're already thinking about these things and laying the roadmap for the entire ecosystem here. So thanks a lot for that, and that's very, very encouraging. And we look forward to having them all coming to TSDSI and contributing all these innovations towards the journey of 6G. Then we have Subhash Mandal from Wipro, who will talk about the Indian requirements and use cases for beyond 5G and 6G. So what are those India-specific drivers in terms of requirements and use cases? Why do we have to think India-specific when we talk about beyond 5G and 6G? Why can't we just embrace whatever is happening globally? So over to you, Subhash Mandal.
Thank you, Pamela. And it was good to hear Dr. Upadhyay and Satish before this. So oftentimes when I interact in the ecosystem, I get this question: how can Indian requirement be any different from the global requirement? And this is very common to hear this, because 3GPP is supposed to be a global standard, and it is the global standard drive that has made the cellular technology so successful, leveraging the scale of economy. So it's a valid question. So my response to that question usually is that it is not that Indian requirements any different. India is yet another country. Demographics is very unique, and it has its requirement, but these requirements are not really voiced into the global standard to the extent it should be. Why is it so? That is because I think the earlier speakers, Pamela and others, said that we have forayed into this standard participation only 7 years back. And in this 7 years, we have made our first impact. We have some of the movers and shakers in this panel, Dr. Ganti being one of such, who created the 5GI, and then that is accepted as a global standard. So if you really look at one of the first Indian requirement has been low mobility large cell that has forayed. So now I have only one slide and 3 points to talk about. We can go to the next slide. I am going to really talk about what is it that is going to drive us to develop standards in 5.5G to 6G to make sure that our voice is heard, our requirements are represented. Our intent is not to create an isolated standard only for India, but make sure that Indian requirements are met, it is globally voiced, and the global community can benefit from this. So one of the first things that we are going to look at is how do we connect the unconnected and reduce the digital divide. So if you really look into today's scenario, India is not the only country in this situation where the unconnected, be it the humans and societies or the machines, not being able to connect, it is creating a lot of economic slowdown in terms of the prosperity in the region. Talk about our villages. We have a lot of talk in the global forum on the smart cities. How many times do we talk about smart villages? We do not really do that. So what we are looking at in the TSDSI study item 70, Satish had put a bit on that. We are looking into the smart villages. How could we really make the villages smart and enable the digital financial inclusion? How do we embrace the other global standards to create a cost-effective technology? So today there exists a licensed and unlicensed technologies. Not all of them are under one standards body. Can we harmonize that and then leverage this for connecting the unconnected? How would I enhance the usage of the licensed and unlicensed? You have heard of PM-ONI, that wide wireless access network interface. How do you really provide a cost-effective connectivity to the rural population? So while 5G has opened the architecture to have an access-agnostic mechanism, how do I take it to the next level that is not relying only for the high-speed, low-latency, massive connectivity, but also other convenience factor and availability factor that is essential for making this unconnected community connected. The next point I will talk about is, while this raw power of the technology in terms of connection speed, low latency is great, how do I leverage that to create a set of use cases so that the local entrepreneurship could be inculcated into the remote areas or underserved areas? Things like usage of the AR, VR technology in vocational training to create an ecosystem that the remote community can become an entrepreneur by themselves. So for example, the machine maintenance, an example which is underserved into the remote connected areas, and with this kind of technology potential exists. Today, if you look into the agriculture sector, there are many cases where the yield is not adequate. There are land that is not being cultivated because of various difficulties. Is there a way I can leverage the connectivity technology and then do an aerial survey with the aerial vehicles? How do I make sure that connectivity can be given in the adequate way? I am not talking about a blanket coverage, because blanket coverage costs money, but is there a way to have a communication hub that it can leverage and yet the vital information can be collected and shared? How do you fit that into the architecture? And the last point I would talk about is uplifting the quality of life for all. Today, if you look at uplifting the quality of life, I think the urban communities are adequately addressed. As at least we can say that attempt has been made. Has the same thing happened? Has the healthcare reached to everybody? Has the education the way it should reach to everybody? Are public safety disaster recovery available for every part of the country? Are every part of country included into digital financial inclusion? is there a sustainability goal that we have taken up? Are we able to meet that? Are the application layer standard, which is supposed to be part of integral part of the 5G ecosystem, is this really embraced? Are we supporting Indian local languages? These are some of the open questions. If we can answer that and embrace it as part of the standard, I do see that the Digital India is going to propel forward with the local language support. People are able to interact with the digital ecosystem seamlessly, even though they are not having the formal education to the extent one is expected to for leveraging the digital ecosystem. So that is what I would think we would need to work on to make sure that we foray into the leapfrog from 5G to 6G. So with that, I will close my session, Pamela.
Thanks a lot, Subhash. So I think very, very important point. And I think all of us should deeply internalize this and voice it, that it's not that we want to do an India-specific technology or standard which is for India only. All we are saying is technology is for everybody, and we want to embrace this at par with the rest of the world, but our needs are different, our priorities are different, our demography is different, right? So if 70% of our population lives in villages, how can we not talk about smart villages with the same breadth that we talk about smart cities? We cannot exclude that 70% of our population, right, from all the aspects of technology deployment, including, as he said, financial inclusion and education and healthcare and all of the above. Excellent insights and perspective, Subhash, on India's requirements and use cases, which will be the drivers for beyond 5G and 6G. And we need to keep these upfront as we delve into this journey. So now Rajesh Gangadhar from Sterlite will talk about what are the infrastructure challenges. So obviously, the level of readiness of Indian infrastructure is different from other parts of the world. And what are those infrastructure challenges that need to be addressed to gear up for embracing beyond 5G and 6G is what Rajesh will talk about.
Thanks, Pamela, and thank you to the speakers before me. I know Satish, Mr. Upadhyay, and Subhash have sort of touched upon the various use cases as we go from 5G to 6G, and also what India-centric approach could be with a focus on the standards and how we can align with the global ecosystem. What I'll touch upon is how does that play out on the ground in order for us to achieve even the reality of the full benefit of 5G and then, of course, 6G in the future. Some fundamental changes have to occur related to infrastructure sharing, spectrum, etc. So that's where my few comments will be about. If you can move to the next slide, please. So as the slide comes on, yeah. So as we all know, as we look at broader spectrum allocations, the real estate of spectrum is available more and more on the higher frequency band. So we go from the low to the mid to the high bands and then to the millimeter wave. And as you go up in the frequency spectrum, one of the laws of physics is that the propagation characteristics reduce. So you go from non-line of sight to near line of sight and then to line of sight. And what that means is your cell site, the spacing shrinks, and your radio, the transmitter, needs to be as close to the receiving UE or the type of UEs that you have, the small, the tablets or smartphones, etc. So this essentially means that you will go from being on top of a tower to essentially on building facades and almost on street furniture, because you have to be within 100, 200, 300 meters. And so what that means is a completely new thought process around being able to share physical infrastructure, allowing for power and backhaul with fiber to the edge, is almost fundamental and critical to enable the success of 5G, leave alone 6G. And add to that is the right of way access. So allowing the connectivity to happen at the edge at gigabit speeds is fundamental. And if you look at where we've gone from, say, 2G to 3G, 3G to 4G, and then now to 5G, you've gone from kilobits to megabits to now gigabits at the edge. The air interface technology has evolved tremendously, and now you can get gigabit speeds over the air. But what has not changed specifically in countries like India is the delivery to the edge. We still have roughly 70-75% of the cell towers that are not fiberized. They use microwave backhaul, or they use UBR, which is the unlicensed Wi-Fi spectrum, 5 GHz spectrum. All of these fall woefully short on capacity. So backhauling all the way from the tower or from the cell site at the edge to the core infrastructure becomes the choke point. And so for that, you have to enable fiberization, deep fiberization of the network. You have to enable, allow street infrastructure, such as those like light poles, traffic signal lights, and even perhaps newsstands and the telas that you see on the streets to be able to connect at gigabit speeds at the edge. And this is actually a reality in many countries, such as in the US, for example. They've converted the old telephone booths to digital signage, and now that signage also includes a Wi-Fi access point and a small cell from a telco operator. So there are ways for even cities and municipalities to convert this infrastructure that may not be procuring any sort of revenue into a completely new revenue generation model by simply allowing the use of that infrastructure for something like a 5G network or a 6G network. So what that allows is deep densification, allow fiberization to the edge, and that will then drive the connectivity at gigabit speeds at the edge. The related item, which is the spectrum, a more holistic spectrum policy that allows for operators to leverage clean spectrum. What I mean by that is spectrum that is unencumbered by either an existing occupant or spectrum that is wide enough that you can leverage the full benefit of the standards is very critical again, and this needs to be thought out very holistically. And how it's allocated to the operators is also critical, because with high reserve price and an auction program that almost limits access to the spectrum for very critical infrastructure, I feel that is fundamental also to the success of 5G and 6G in India eventually. And you almost see that there is a reluctance to go into an auction cycle in India, whereas there are countries where there has been successful auctions. There's a model in the US where $40 billion was spent recently on a C-band spectrum auction. But then there are other countries like India and Africa, and countries in Africa and APAC. They need to consider what the overall economic benefit can be achieved by enabling services, applications, and the connectivity use cases in countries like India, especially in the rural communities. And for that, you have to enable operators to be able to leverage the spectrum at lower costs, enable them to use that capex to deploy the network, operate and service the networks, and also use them for various use cases and applications that will then benefit the consumers. At the end of the day, it impacts your country's GDP, because you're then benefiting on the back end, because it's enabling business of various kinds. So a good model to sort of look at is the Wi-Fi. Globally, the Wi-Fi spectrum has been given out for free. And it's $1 trillion economy just on the basis of being able to use that spectrum for free. So I think that model, there has to be a good balance of what the cost of the spectrum, because as you go in higher bands, the propagation characteristics are much smaller. So just because it's a wide band, doesn't mean that the same reserve price applies. So you have to think about how that trade-off can be matched. Next slide, please. Yeah. So another critical point that needs to be considered is the ability to share active infrastructure. Today in India, as it stands, every operator must own and operate their own active infrastructure, which is the antenna, the radio, base station. If it's a small cell, they need to operate that as well. Now, not every location on every cell site is utilized 100% of the time. So there is always, and especially if you look at, again, focusing on the rural side of the country, which is a vast majority of the population. Now, if you allowed active infrastructure sharing, operators could pitch in and pay for the bandwidth that they need. And somebody like a tower company could host the infrastructure. That gives them the revenue. There's a revenue model for them. And then the operators are only paying for the bandwidth that they're utilizing. So there is a cost benefit to be had across the players. Of course, there's competition. The competition should not be about who has a cell site versus who does not. It should be about what are the services that you're offering to the consumer. Let the consumer choose which operator they want to sign up with because they have this experience on that network. Let every operator be allowed to do that. So I think that is very critical because that again lets operators spend that the limited capex that they may have more efficiently and more prudently and be able to leverage a footprint that allows them to provide homogeneous services and applications as the case may be. So I think that is one critical element. One last point I want to leave with is we talk about industrial automation, we talk about private networks. There are test cases, if you look at US or perhaps even in Europe, in Germany, where allocating a private spectrum or even a shared spectrum concept has allowed a certain segment of connectivity and utilization and use cases to suddenly evolve very quickly. Simply because it gives them the autonomy to run the applications that they need. What I mean by that is if you take a mining company or an oil and gas company or an automotive company, their use cases and applications are very different. They need very critical, maybe latency sensitive or bandwidth hogging applications that may or may not be available from a telco operator, for example, and it may not justify the investment for a telco operator, but for that private entity, that is something that is very critical. And so allowing that, enabling that is another way for us to take things into this automation world where robotics, near real-time applications start to flourish. And on the back end, again, there will always be a telco connected. So there's always this push and pull about what it'll do to the telco ecosystem. I don't see that as being an issue. There's a coexistence there. There is a complementary offering. It has worked well in other countries. And I think as we look at applications, we went through the use cases. It is very critical that all of these elements be considered holistically. And most, last but not the least, we move fast. I think we take too much time to make decisions. I think we have to move fast so that this becomes a reality and it can be staged very quickly and adopted very quickly. I think with that, I'll end my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajesh. Very, very interesting points on enabling the infrastructure right from fiberization and spectrum and the private networks and small cell deployment. So all those aspects you've covered very well. And I think, as you said, it takes time for our common machinery to move. So maybe we need to put in these requests for beyond 5G and 6G today, or within the next few months, so that the machinery starts churning for that. I think you've captured that, because without these infrastructure enablers, which to a large extent are within the which very tightly coupled with the regulatory aspects that the government controls, I think all the other efforts may not come to fruition. So very well captured there. So with that, I think we then come to our research ecosystem and our pioneer for 5GI, Professor Radhakrishna Ganti, who other than him to tell us that we need to start thinking about beyond 5G and 6G. Now that he has made 5GI happen and demonstrated to the entire world what it will take for us to we need how we need to put this path of articulating Indian requirements and enabling Indian innovations into the global standards. So over to you, Professor Ganti.
Thanks, Pamela. So very nice to be here. So I'll just give my views on what is the role of Indian research and innovation going forward from 5G. Next slide, please. So before we go ahead and understand what should be the next thing, what should be 5G plus, what should be 6G, we should understand a little bit about 5G, and I'm going to focus on 5GI because that is the technology that's pioneered by TSDSI. So I think, according to me, there are 5 key technologies for this 5th generation of technology. One is we have better signals because of OFDM. I mean, that's there in 4G, but 5G is like 4G on steroids. And we have efficient transmission. Essentially, we can transmit power to a particular point rather than just spread it out in space. That's massive MIMO. And we have moved to finally, after 4 generations, we have moved to a UV-oriented design. This is mainly for power consumption to save power on your UV handhelds. That is what I call the green signaling. And of course, one of the biggest selling points of 5G is the low latency. You can play, apparently, I mean, you can play video games, you can do surgery on 5G. So this is all. I mean, so this requires changes in the core network, in the RAN, everything. It gives you a very, very fast response. And the final point is a larger bandwidth. Okay, so essentially 5G talks about few hundreds of megahertz of bandwidth in a single carrier, okay? So specifically the millimeter wave frequency. So all of this have been put in, and we have branded that as 5G. I believe that these are 5 are the key technologies of the 5th generation technology. Okay. So the question is, how mature are this, and have we actually got have we extracted all the juice out of this for 5G? Okay, that's what I want to focus on the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so if you look at 5G, 5G or 5GI, essentially it's a completely new framework for cellular communications. Okay, so it was focused on verticals rather than just talking about connecting 2 points. Okay, so it's a framework, it's a vision for 1 decade. It just provided a big framework, and people are trying to build on this framework and improve technologies or develop new technologies on this framework. Okay, so if you look at 5G or 5th generation technology, you have a lot of configuration flexibility. Okay, that's a plus and that's a negative. I mean, I'll talk about the negative of that. See, one of the important things that Rajesh also pointed on the previous speaker pointed out is that 5G enabled private networks. Okay, that's a very, very important thing. I mean, in the sense that you can focus on security, data privacy. Essentially, things are modular. Okay, this happened because of network slicing in the core and some enhancements in RAN. Okay, so what are the issues with this whole thing? See, currently, at least my belief is that we have not juiced out 5G enough. Okay, it's just the starting point. Okay. So massive MIMO, while massive MIMO is enabled by 5G, I mean, the gains we are seeing at this moment are still not impressive, the practical gains. Okay, a lot of work has to be put in by the academic world and the research world so that you can extract out the actual gains that have been promised by 5G. And another negative point that I find with 5G at this moment is it's too flexible. Okay, it's too complicated specification for a generic deployment. I mean, you require very, very lot of specialists to understand and configure a big network of 5G. I mean, it's not, if, for example, deploy a private network, it's not easy for a small organization to do that. Okay, and one other thing that you find is that NB-IoT is more popular than MMTC that is promised by 5G. Okay, NB-IoT is still a 4G technology. The MMTC of 5G is still not mature. Okay, so there's a lot of work that has to be done in getting the massive machine type communication into practice for 5G. Okay. So next slide, please. So what is the role of the Indian research community? essentially, there's a lot of work that's being done in the academia and the research labs in India. Okay, and there's many projects are being funded by various government organization, industry in this wireless domain. Okay, so it's time that we we understand how do we convert these ideas and papers papers into actual practice. Okay, this is not an easy task. This is not a straightforward task. I mean, just because you have an idea doesn't mean that it gets converted into a product and then it goes into a standard and everyone starts using it. There's a huge gap, and this gap has to be bridged and actively be bridged. Okay. So one thing that's a great tool, that's a great organization that's out there to help in this translation is TSDSI. Okay. So a success story in this regard is the 5GI. So the 5GI, the base, some of the technologies that have gone into 5GI, which is an enhancement of 5G, have been thought about in academia, in the academic institutions. Then people have gone to TSDSI. This has been standardized with the help of industry, academia, and government. And finally, now it's accepted by ITUR, okay, as a IMT 2020 technology. So it's time the researchers and government agencies, they should now get together and take a coherent approach, rather than doing part by part action. All of them should get together and have a plan for the next 5 to 6 years. Okay, this is the time we go and beat out 5G. The next generation of 5G or the 6G. Next slide, please. Okay, so it's very good that we focus on the global solutions. Of course, that is what forms the base of everything. But in addition, there are India-specific problems that we have to look at. Right? And that's very, very important. Okay, so people might ask, okay, what's so different about India and developed countries? Of course, there's a lot of differences from the technology, from the technology perspective itself. See, one thing that we observe is we see that the number of users per cell is much more larger in India because of the huge density of our population. Okay? That's one thing. And the second thing that we see is we are also very cost sensitive in terms of devices. Okay? So you cannot build technologies which are very, very expensive to solve problems in India. Okay? There should be some reasonable sensitivity to cost for technologies that we develop in India. That's one thing. And the second thing that I want to emphasize is this is a very important point that's often not given enough prominence. The propagation models in India has to be, now it's time that we do this propagation studies and understand the propagation models in India. This is very important. And another thing that I want to emphasize is that I'm just showing you some of the examples that differentiate the work that we have to do in India-specific case for India-specific research. The fiber densities in India are very, very different compared to the developed countries. Okay, so this has impact on in terms of backhaul connectivity, front haul connectivity. A lot of so this changes the technology that comes out as standards. Of course, the use cases are also very different in India. I don't expect a 600 km/h moving car in India anytime soon. Okay, so we have a different set of use cases that we have to focus on and see what is the best solution that we can come. And we have to be able to push this into the standards. That's very, very critical. Next slide, please. So some of the areas that are being considered for 6G across the world, I'm just going to highlight them. One thing is people want to move to much more larger MIMO configurations, few thousands of antennas. Of course, the other thing that's gaining a lot of traction is full duplex communication. Very high frequency communication. People want to move from millimeter wave to terahertz, almost close to light frequency. This is mainly for indoor communications and other things. So an important thing that may be very relevant for our country is the quantum communications and quantum security for the underlying networks for cellular networks. Okay, can we use this quantum QKD kind of technologies to secure our networks? Okay, so one of the according to me, one of the most important things that's going to happen in the next few years is AI-based communication. It is, when I say AI-based communication, it's not using data to improve your AI. I'm saying the protocol itself will be AI generated. Okay, the entire specification should be generated by AI rather than you specifying a lot of things and you trying to use the same thing for across different use cases. Okay, so that's going to be important. Of course, there's a lot of use cases for all this: tactile internet, holographic communication, mission to human machine interactions. So I think the use cases are going to get mature, and as people start thinking about this, this is a very, very initial consideration of your use cases. Next slide, please. So some of the immediate action items that as we should focus on. The first thing I'll put one of the highest priorities is channel models. There's a reason why I say this, because channel models are the fundamental thing for standardization activities. Either in ITU or 3GPP, these are what are used for simulation and trying to understand how good a technology is. Okay, so current channel models are all based on conditions that are there in Western countries. Okay, so this is particularly true for high frequency channels where humidity, temperature, materials, everything plays a role. So I think it's the right time for us to start activity on these channel propagations. It's time consuming and expensive, but absolutely necessary if we want to be ready for 5G, enhanced 5G or 6G going forward. Okay. And as Satish has mentioned, now there's a lot of work that's happening in TSDSI. We're trying to understand the requirements and the possible use cases from an Indian perspective. I think it's time. This is the correct time juncture for academic researchers and researchers in research labs to get together, brainstorm, and come up with good use cases and good requirements for India. Okay. With this, I want to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was very, very good. Providing the basis for why we need different channel models and Indian use cases have to drive how all those technology elements, whether it's AI or haptics or holography or all these new technologies that we talk about, when we look at them with the India lens of Indian requirements and Indian use cases and Indian demography and geographical kind of challenges, I think we need to address them to be able to embrace these technologies. And a lot of research is needed. I think that comes out very strongly. And we really want Professor Ganti to be that role model for the rest of the research community to start thinking about this, because 6G opens up a whole new plethora of technology challenges that our research community needs to dive into and solve. So thanks a lot for that. Now, keeping an eye on the clock, we have 15 minutes for our Q&A/panel session. So what I would do is I would direct a couple of questions at each of you and or a subset of you each time, and I would also request the panelists to think about one question that they may want to ask from their fellow panelists. Okay, so let me start with the question that I have here on the global perspective, right? So how is the rest of the world gearing up for beyond 5G and 6G, and how do you see us in lockstep with them? Are we in step with that? So Satish, maybe you would like to address that question?
Yes. So as I mentioned, one of the key global effort is the IMT 2030 vision document that also will articulate the requirements for what we can call as beyond 5G or 6G specification. And TSDSI, from TSDSI perspective, we are very clear that we will be contributing to this effort. And from there, subsequently, we will do our best to harmonize with 3GPP from whatever we develop in TSDSI. So we are not out of step with the rest of the world. We are in tune. We just want to be a bit ahead so that we take meaningful contributions to these global forums. Thank you.
Okay. So the next question I would direct towards Subhash Mandal and Professor Ganti. Is he still around? I don't see his video. Okay. So based on this experience of contributing in 5G standards, what should we be doing differently to further improve our impact on standards related to beyond 5G or 6G? So what should be our approach on compared to what we did with 5G, 5GI in this beyond 5G and 6G standards. So, Professor Ganti, you want to go first?
Yes, Pamela. So one thing that, see, for 5G, we have actually approached the global bodies at a later stage when things were a little bit mature. So we started late. So the first thing that we should do is for 6G, for this coming thing, we should start right now. There's a lot of global, this work happening all across the world in terms of academia. Also, we see a lot of papers coming on the term 6G. Similarly, there are lots of conferences and workshops being held to understand the requirements for the next generation of standards. So I think this is the correct time we have to start early. And another important thing that has to happen is we have to start and we have to have a larger group of people working on this in a coherent manner. Okay, so if you look at a lot of the countries which had a lot of contributions, you see that there's a huge team from the government, there's a huge team from industry and academia, all of them working together and making this happen. Okay, so I think it's time that we also have a similar kind of a setup in which we have a vision and we work towards the vision rather than people doing some individual contributions to their best effort. I think that's very, very important if we want to make a significant effort. Okay, I think TSDSI is doing, we are in the right step. At this moment, as Satish mentioned, we have started this requirements document, which is going to feed into IMT 30, 2030, the next, what they call a 6th generation standard, the requirements for that. But I think we should have more focus groups and we should start drilling into the more finer aspects of things rather than wait till the end. If you wait for 5 more years, we'll be late. It's time we start right now.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. And Subhash Mandal, who is also a member of the IEEE Standards Association Board of Governors. So, Subhash, are you there? Can you share your perspective? Yes, please.
Yeah, Pamela. Yeah, I absolutely agree with Professor Ganti. I will add and build on top of what Professor Ganti said. So, I think our first success really has been enabled by enabling and funding the research that has yielded the outcome in the form of and of course, heroic effort and enormous commitment. I think it is like Professor Ganti said, it is not a one-person show. It has to be the entire ecosystem playing together. Now, how do you enable public-private partnership in a framework that brings not only the academia and the other entities like TSDSI alone and best effort coming from the industry? Is there a way for us to putting all of them together to make sure the progress happens really fast? The second point I wanted to highlight is, can we bring the consumers also as part of the whole ecosystem? So put a very clearly defined objective. If this set of things are done, you get access to certain amount of fund, but make sure that this technology developed, implemented, deployed, all happens within this ecosystem. I think that will do a lot of good. And then harmonization of global standard is on key aspect in the journey. These are the two things I wanted to add on top of what Ganti said.
Okay, thanks. So looking forward to you pulling in those consumers into our deliberations on standards. So then, another question that I had here was on how do we track our progress? How do we measure our success in this journey to beyond 5G and 6G? So that when we so what are those metrics or milestones or key pointers that you want to specify that 10 years from now or 5 years from now, in between we are measuring progress on those, and then 10 years from now we say, yes, we've achieved what we set out to achieve. So I would give that question first to Mr. Upadhyay and then to Rajesh, and then if others want to pipe in, that would be good. Yes, Mr. Upadhyay. I think you're on mute, Mr. Upadhyay.
Sorry. Thanks, Pamela, for that. And as I said in my presentation, that we have a ecosystem to be, there are different stakeholders in the ecosystem, like handset and device manufacturers, equipment manufacturers, infrastructure providers, and R&D, standards body, the government policies, the investment policies. So all these, we need to look at each of these things, and we need to, take a little time to how do we say, for example, regulatory policy in terms of spectrum allocation, regulatory policy in terms of giving, R&D funding. For example, Government of India has funded a consortium headed by IIT Madras of 225 crore. That was a very, very good beginning, because funding is after all required. The same way in handsets, how do we plan, how do we promote handset manufacturing in India? So in each of these ecosystem stakeholders, we might have to draw certain key parameters and then look at these parameters that out of 100 in each parameter, what we are achieving. So first, decide the KPIs, and based on the KPIs or KRAs, then look at these KRAs very periodically. As Professor Ganti said, that is the right time to start with, and since things are in fluid stage, nothing has been finalized. So if you can take the lead, things can get in our favor in future.
So looking at what happened in 5G, maybe if we say that we should be doing trials and pilots in India in 2028. So 6G pilots and trials should start at 2028. Okay, that's when we will get ready for deployments in 2030 or early 2030.
No,
maybe that's a milestone we should announce to the world and start working towards it.
So again, see, the whole thing happens by industry. Industry drives this. So if industry says yes, we are ready with 6G deployment, again government will definitely take action in auctioning the terahertz.
Okay. So Subhash has already signed up for it. Let's say what Rajesh has to say for that.
So basically, government will work based on the industry input. Government always works based on the industry input. Unfortunately, in our country, because after the 2G verdict, a little bit condition of our operators became bad in terms of sustaining investment, and some of the operators had to exit. Now, since there are a consolidated market, limited number of operators, hope they will start making good profits, and so that they are able to make investments in 5G and 6G for the country.
So Rajesh, you want to go next?
Yes, sir. So I'll just take off from where Mr. Upadhyay left off. Government should be an enabler of innovation and development in the country. And to a large extent, they are in various other industry verticals. But I think in the telecom industry, it's become very sluggish for the last 10 years for exactly the reason Mr. Upadhyay mentioned. Somehow there has to be a stimulus. There has to be a push given from the government, maybe a subsidy or some sort of waiver for the telcos to, basically become healthy as an operational entity. And then that will drive investments back into the operational side of things. So I think the government has to view this as a GDP growth factor. The telco has become more like a utility. The application services that we all use today, I mean, we're talking on broadband connectivity right now. Without this, we couldn't function for the last year. So this is almost like water and electricity. And so the government must just enable that as a basic, right that should be given to every citizen of the country, and the operators then become become more motivated to invest in the use cases and the applications that we are all talking about. Otherwise, this sort of thing will continue for years, and we'll still be looking back and saying what happened. So I think some action on the ground has to happen. Initiatives have to be taken, and also bring the cities and the municipalities into the mix. They have to see an upside to this overall ecosystem. And we try to do that with the smart cities, but that hasn't really taken off. Again, the monetization aspect is very critical. If the cities can and the municipalities see a way of generating revenue from helping the say street infrastructure to be utilized for as a right of way, then that becomes a private-public partnership that Subhash was talking about. I think that needs to happen.
So Rajesh, what you're saying is that the industry would definitely be ready to do pilots in 2028, provided the government provides the enabling environment. So if we declare today that we are going to be doing pilots in 2028, then the government needs to provide all the spectrum and policies and financial incentives starting from maybe 2023, so that we're ready in 2028.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah. We've been talking about 5G for the last 2-3 years. Since I moved back to India, I've been hearing this. But again, when you see action on the ground, it's still there's a lot of issues.
Spectrum has not been allocated yet.
So I think that's where
So
it's
that
a
needs
chicken
to
or the egg,
change.
but I think someone has to put.
So let's put a roadmap out there for the government when they need to release spectrum, when they need to do this, when they need to. So let's put out that roadmap with dates. And as you said, if the industry comes forward, the government listens to it. So at least in this Atmanirbhar days, we have a voice, right? So anyway, so taking off from there, Satish, you would like to specify any metric or goal beyond just that we need to do pilots that we need to work towards? Satish, are you still there?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is that for 5G or?
Beyond 5G and 6G. So that what is that other metric? So one metric, which is the deployment side, that, okay, if we want to deploy in time, we should start with pilots in 2028. That's the big metric that we are saying. Is there another measure or that we could have to, maybe?
Yes, one of the key metrics. One of the key metrics that is typically standard in all of the bodies, international bodies like ITU or 3GPP, is the quantum of contribution which goes in from a country, from a set of organizations or a country, a geography. And these are in fact even monitored actively by the secretariat of the respective organizations, very actively monitored, because that has implications in terms of the number of acceptance. There's always a percentage of contributions which will get accepted. And obviously it also means IPR portfolio will lie with a certain geography. So it is very key that we in India make sure that the quantum of contributions going from India to ITU and to 3GPP are way above than what we have today. That's one of the key metrics that we will have to follow.
Excellent point, actually. I remember that when we hosted the 3GPP plenary in Chennai, I sat down with one of my colleagues and we counted the number of contributions that were discussed in that RAN plenary, and there were about 500 items that were discussed. And then we counted where they were coming from, and we counted that 50% of them came from China. So here, and maybe from India, we had 3 or 4, not even 1%.
Yeah, the quantum and the quality of contribution really has to go up.
Yeah.
That's the key metric for us.
So I think that's a metric to track. How many contributions are we making vis-a-vis our other counterparts? And TSDSI could definitely do that as a metric. And I also see something that was published, publicly announced, was the number of SEPs, the standard essential patents that have gone into the release 15 and 16 of 3GPP. And lo and behold, there as well, more than 50% of those SEPs came from our big brother on the West. So I think these are trackable metrics, and maybe once we start showing progress on those, then we have a strong case to tell the government to do everything possible to make those pilots happen. Once we show the contributions and the SEPs, is that a fair ask from the ecosystem here? Yeah. Okay, so anybody else wants to add something or ask anything?
May I add? So I actually had 3 metrics in mind. Satish spoke about the first one. my second metrics of measurement would be, of all the significant contribution we did in the standard, how many of them are developed on an end-to-end basis inside the country. So in terms of from specification to creation of the technologies, be the fabrication, all of it, and then creating a product in India that absolutely meets that requirement, both on the EV side as well as on the network side. The third parameter I would measure as a success is, of those end-to-end product that is developed in India, how many of them is exportable and has a global appeal. So if we can get into these three things, KPIs right, and enable the right ecosystem to make it happen, I would think that we have arrived on the technology plan.
So could you repeat the third one?
The third one is, of all those technologies that we developed on an end-to-end basis, how many of them have a global appeal so that we are able to export?
Okay. Good metrics. So let's end on that note. I think we're 3 minutes over. So thank you, everybody.
I'm sorry, may I intervene, ma'am? There is one question in the chat box. I posted in the WhatsApp group also.
Box.
Yeah, I think
Or may I read that question?
Yeah, I'm opening the chat box. That's what, how to nurture an IP a system for IP generation for beyond 5G and 6G. Right? That's the question? So yeah, who would take that? Subhash, you want to take that?
I can do that. I don't know if I'll do the justice, but I guess the IP generation beyond 5G, there are incidents or I see the precedents where there are patents generated in India for the 5GI as an example. So I think if there is a seriousness and willingness and the serious work done, we can always generate the IP. So with that, I will leave it there, Pamela. Maybe you would like to add anything else.
Okay, so Dr. Upadhyay, you want to say something about that?
I say that if IPs are really, if they turn out to be SEPs, and then the SDOs will have to give this on friend terms. So it becomes a good thing for the country. If the IP becomes an SEP, then it is all the good for us.
Yes.
So one of the nurturing is that converting into a SEP. If it becomes a standard special patent, that will fetch some money also in terms of friend terms decided by standard.
Pamela, I can also add to this.
Yes, please.
Can I add, please?
Yeah, both of you, please add. So Ganti, you want to go first, then Satish. Yeah.
Sure. See, from an academic perspective, so the reason, only in the recent years that academics have started, at least in India, have started to look at these patents in a more serious fashion. As an academic, the first thing is papers. Papers are the most important thing. Publications in reputed journals. For the career growth and how they evaluate you. So I think if we are serious about IP, there should be some value should be given to the patents that are filed by academics in their career growth. It's very important to do this at a high level rather than just doing it on an individual basis. There should be some proper metric for this. That will automatically spur the number of patents filed by in academic institutions. Okay, I'm just talking from a strictly academic perspective.
Right, and I would like to add to that one patent is equal to 10 papers and one standards contribution is equal to 100 papers. That's the metric that Ministry of
I'm sure that will be contested by Ganti.
I'm telling you, that's the kind of effort that goes. Okay, you could have done 100 papers in the time and effort it took to get one contribution to standards. Okay.
But this is something that has to be seriously thought about. I mean, that will also encourage the faculty to file more patents. And of course, then it's a question of how do you convert these patents into standards and other things. That's the second step.
Yes, yes. So Satish, you want to go next?
Okay, can I add?
Yes, please, please.
So, yes, the way I
We can't hear you, Satish. Hello? Satish, you're either muted. Yeah.
There is another question in the chat box, objective type. That was the second question. So first question was, are we in step with the global
We've
initiative?
already taken that question, Asif. We've already taken care of that question. Okay. So, yeah, Satish?
So am I audible now?
Yes,
So the
yes.
way I see it is, industry has to drive the 6G efforts, and in collaboration with the academics. So industry in itself cannot do anything. Academics in itself will get into a research mode. Nothing much comes out of it. So this has to be a combination of industry and academics. Industry driving it in a platform like TSDSI. And now we are doing the right job in, say, for example, trying to get the requirements in place for MT 2030 submissions, and that will drive a lot of subsequent follow-ups. That is the right model in which we have to go. But the industry really has to step up in India. It cannot be just academics. It cannot be just industry. I mean, that is the way to go.
Okay. So we will be, yeah. So I think the message is very clear. Our industry players here, they need to bring their technical experts into TSDSI, into all the discussions and dialogues. And as I think Subhash Mandal had mentioned, it's about the verticals. So that expertise also needs to be brought in from the application services companies, application software companies, to make this whole 6G journey successful. So I think we are. Anybody else has a last point they want to say for 1 minute, and then maybe we have to close because we're already almost 10 minutes. Yes, Dr. Upadhyay.
I can only say, just to add on what Satish said, he was very right that only industry cannot do, only academia cannot do. I had been to Korea a couple of times, and I saw that industry, the government, and the academia working so tightly that they complement each other very, very nicely, and that is the reason that a lot of things come out from the Korea. From the academic perspective, sometimes the academic rules are such that if you publish paper, your career growth is there. Whether that gets industrialized or no is of no consequence. I think the more research in the academia, which is driving the industrial output or the being readily applicable to the solving any problem, will do good if academia and industry work together. Because at times we have seen academia also doesn't get enough support from industry, sometimes data collection, access to the facilities. So if we work together, like I have seen in Korea, that they really work very, very together. And in fact, one of the university, that name was Samsung Tower. I asked that professor, why is the name Samsung Tower? He said the whole funding has come from Samsung for this tower. And once the research happens and it gets into the system, the royalty is paid back to the university. So that kind of system we should work out here also. If some research is going out and it is producing some, solving some problem and making some financial contribution, some of it should go back to the academia so that more research can be spurred. Thank you.
Very well said. And on that note, the trick is to bring our industry, academia, and government together, and that will keep us in step on this journey. So thank you very much. It was a very, very insightful and enjoyable conversation here, and I learned a lot. And I hope you all also are taking away and are fully energized to make 6G happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you all for getting the time for all of us. And it would have been great if we would have welcomed you in person. But I hope that we can see you soon, like next year in physical format in our show. So thank you that you took time in your busy schedule. So thank you so much, Pamela ma'am. Thank you so much, sir. So
Thank you, and yeah, sorry we could not make it in person because of this corona fear.
I know.
We even had
But
to
yes,
get our tickets cancelled
show-
at the last minute.
But the show is doing great. Like we have massive crowd here, so we all are excited that this time that it will be a benchmark for this whole year, and maybe next year we can start again, like from where we are leaving this year. So hope to see you all next year. You're most welcome. Thank you so much for the time
Thank you.
which you took for this thing. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.